Hello, everybody. Welcome. Today we have a returning guest for the release stream with a stream of very interesting features that we're going to talk about. Some features that I know a lot of you have already been using. You may not know who shipped them, but we've got with us Famiu. Introduce yourself, buddy. Introduce yourself. Tell us what's going on. Tell us how did all these features get shipped this release, and what's going on with that.
Hi, I'm Famiu. I am a regular Neovim contributor, and this release I worked on WinBar, nvimcmd, nvim parse cmd, in command preview, and all that stuff. That's all.
Awesome. So the ones that I wanted to start with, because I think they're really interesting and intriguing, and I've been actually using them myself for writing some personal stuff as well as plugins, is we'll start with nvimcmd or nvimcmd, as many people know.
Yeah.
Give us sort of a landscape of where we were before the feature and then where we landed after a lot of the stuff that you've been doing.
So before nvimcmd, you could only really use nvim command or nvimcmg, both of
Mm-hmm.
these API functions, and you could only really pass strings to them, and that was a pain if you wanted to like modify a command or control which what you want to pass and all that stuff. So nvimcmd, it basically allows you to pass commands in a structured format. So count, range, then arguments and all that stuff. And before you couldn't really have spaces in command arguments and couldn't really control where arguments were split. Right now you can do that. For example, you can have an args array in CMD, and you can set arguments to whatever you want. You can even have numeric arguments, and I believe Lewis did a PR where he allowed indexing vim.cmd, so you could do vim.cmd.write or whatever command you want.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really cool. This release,
Yeah,
I
so
love it.
just so everyone's aware, before it's literally just like you wanted to make a command, you had to string interpolate that command,
Yeah,
hope you escaped everything correctly, like, oops, hopefully I didn't accidentally convert anything that was this type into that type, or like accidentally pass
yeah,
like table 0x531723, or something, something silly
yeah.
like that to the command.
It was a
Um,
pain.
Yes, right. And that was very annoying. And it also felt really annoying because there is a wide sort of like swath of Vim commands, right? X commands
Yeah,
that don't really make any sense to port to like new API functions, right? Like we really don't need like
yeah,
nvim bot write or something like that as like a new,
yeah,
as like some new command. So this takes it from that, right, is my understanding, and then we can pass those arguments, and you just have a table. You just do the
yeah,
programmer thing, which is you use
yeah,
tables instead of strings. And I guess I didn't realize that we also sort of extended it to allow new things, because before the problem was you always had to basically be able to like parse this
yeah,
string, right? Like on the Vim side,
yeah.
and which made it not possible to do like certain kinds of things,
So,
like passing a
yeah,
number directly, like what you're
yeah,
saying.
yeah,
But now we don't have to parse it because we're just going to send it
yeah.
structured. Am I understanding that correctly?
Pretty much, yeah.
Very cool. Yeah.
And I'm currently really, not currently, but planning to work on an optimization for nvimcmd, which will make it faster than uh, just using the command as a string or using nvim command or all that stuff.
Nice. I know there's going to be a few people in chat that are like, ooh, am I going to get to shave off 1/100th of a millisecond on my startup times? Everyone rewrite their string commands now, No, that's
Uh,
really cool. So that's sort of like the first half of it, and then the second half of it is nvim parse command. Lay
yeah.
us what's going on there? What is happening with nvim parse command?
So sometimes you have a string, but you don't really want to pass it directly as a command. You want to modify it a bit. So now the option you had before nvim parse command was to manually parse the command string by yourself, which could be very problematic, could be buggy, and
Yes, it will be.
it will,
Not it can be, it will be.
it definitely will be, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would be a massive pain. And
Mhm.
after nvim parse command, it basically does is it parses the command for you. It returns it in a structured format that you can directly pass to nvimcmd, but that's normally pointless. But what you can do is use nvim parse cmd to get the command in a structured format, and you can modify the structured format, and then you can pass it to nvimcmd, which saves you a lot of the string manipulation shenanigans, whatever.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think that that's part's really exciting too. Is maybe you have
Yeah,
some like set of commands that have all these different modifiers or other things
yeah,
on it, and you just want to change it so that now it's like, oh, it's this thing except bot left instead of bot right, and you're
yeah,
like, oh, well,
pretty
that's
much.
that's nice now. Instead of like hoping that I can do some string substitution to end up with the
Yeah,
right string to execute. And you're like, oh, yeah, that's not really like the land I want to be living in for these kinds of problems.
yeah. Dealing with string in general.
Yes. Do you think that are there any sort of like interesting tidbits either about the implementation or future improvements that you can think of that you'd like to share with everybody?
As I mentioned already, I'd like to make an optimization to nvimcmd, but besides that, currently the code for it is a bit messy, and there's a lot of code
Mm,
duplication in nvimcmd and how vim generally executes command. Lewis was working on refactoring that. I might also help him. Who knows?
very cool. Any interesting uses you've seen so far of like nvimcmd or nvim parse command?
Um, vim.cmd indexing is one of them, but
Yeah.
so far
I
not
find that
really.
that's actually really nice. Like I've used that a few times already, and it feels a lot
Yeah,
better to write something like
I think it's really cool.
vim.command.write,
Yeah,
and I think
it feels
especially,
amazing.
yeah, it does feel good. And the other thing for me too in the past, and I had some difficulties managing this, like for Telescope, especially a while ago when we started Telescope, was you just had to
Yeah,
like remember to escape like every place that you might end up calling like v split
yeah,
for some file or like all this stuff, and it's like super annoying because, oh,
yeah,
like I forgot to test this on Windows and I need to like double escape these things or not escape this, or and now
yeah.
we
I can
don't have
see
to
that.
do that. You just call like vim.command.vsplit and then pass
Yeah,
in a file name, which is really, I think, really exciting, like a really big quality of life improvement for Lua in
yeah,
general over VimScript, right? Because like before, you would still have to manage these problems if you were like
yeah,
writing VimScript. So this like feels more natural way to
yeah.
call X commands than you would have been able to previously.
It also stops people from complaining and asking people to turn every command into an API function,
Yes,
which is
agreed. Which
unnecessary.
Right. It is unnecessary now that we have nvim command. Before,
Yeah,
it sometimes felt necessary because you had to always
yeah,
remember all of these weird little vimisms about what things could
yeah,
be escaped or not, or whatever that might be. I think also the
yeah.
other nice thing, right, is like not just for Lua but also for remote plugins, it becomes a lot easier to call X commands and things like that because this is just
Hmm?
part of the API. And so once again, I just remind the people in the audience what's cool about it is as we're sort of like shipping these improvements, incremental or sort of like brand new, almost greenfield style things for like Lua, it also improves things like the remote plugin infrastructure, which could help people writing GUIs or other cool plugins, which is awesome. I think it's nice.
Yeah. nvimcmd is really one of those features that aren't really flashy and appealing to the regular user, but for plugin developers, it's
Mm.
huge.
Yes, agreed. And I think it's one of those sort of like once you start doing a little bit of scripting of your
Yeah,
own editor, right? Like where you start to blur that line between whether you are your own plugin author versus sort of like just a consumer of plugins. This is one of the
I've
ones
been
that
there.
will, yeah, it solves a lot of regular everyday kinds of things that you would be
Yeah,
running into like I would want to write something that can save a file under some circumstance, or like open some new file, and you're like, it
Hmm.
works great until you have a file with a space in it, and then you're like, why did the thing that I write not work anymore? And then now you don't have to worry about that because we
Yeah.
can solve those kinds of problems with nvim command. So I think it's great all around. I considered it a pretty flashy feature when I saw it, and when I saw nvim parse command, I thought that's flashy. I don't know a ton of cases where I'm going to
I mean,
use
you
nvim
develop
parse command.
plugins, so
That's true. That's true. So my definition of fancy features and like flashy features may be slightly different. You've got me there. You've got me there. Cool. So I think that's really cool. I really like both of these features. Encourage people to start exploring those, and of course, preemptively rewrite all of your string commands in nvim command so you can experience that
yeah.
little speed up.
Not yet, not
um,
yet.
yeah, not yet, but I'm saying like they'll be ready. So once you ship it, then it'll just be like one day they open it up and they're like, oh, since I check my startup time every time I open
One
up Neovim,
nanosecond of starter time decreased.
and they're like posting about it on Reddit. I just want to say big shout out to the Neovim core devs. I shaved off 1 nanosecond from my startup time today. No, so so I love that. I love that. But let's move on to the next thing, which is also still related to commands, and I think is really
Yeah,
interesting. And I'm excited. I've seen a few really cool plugins. I think you've
yeah,
seen them too, and we'll probably
yeah,
chat about them. Hit me with what is ink command and what happened recently with that you've been working on.
yeah. So before you could, when you wrote a command like substitute, you could like preview what the command did, like before without even executing it.
Yeah, I get this
So
question all
if
the
you,
time. Apparently, people didn't realize that it's a thing, but I like am doing some
yeah,
substitute on screen and it's live applying, and people are like,
yeah,
"What? What plugin is that?" And I'm like, "That's been built in since like before I started even using Neovim.
yeah.
It's been around for a while."
Same goes for searching. You could like incrementally search, and
Yep.
so before it was really limited to substitute and similar commands.
Yep.
And right now, what I did was allow it for user defined commands. So if you define a command, you could also define a preview function that allows you to trigger a preview of that command. So you could display the changes without actually the user having to execute the command, which is really neat. And that allows for a lot of things. I think you've seen a few plugins that utilize it.
Yeah. So one of the ones that I've seen was like an LSP rename
LSP
one.
rename, yeah.
Yeah. And that one
Yeah,
was really cool
that was,
because it starts renaming as you type, which is exciting.
yeah.
Yeah.
I've also extended in-command support for multiple buffers. So before you could
Oh,
only do a single buffer, now you can do multiple of them. All
nice.
all the buffers that are open in the current tab page, all of them.
Sweet. I didn't know that. That's pretty cool too. One that
Yeah,
I would like to do sometime that, or someone who's watching this can do this instead, would be I really like this plugin called Tabularize. I don't know if other people have used
yeah,
it. It's an old plugin. It's really nice and like it's got a lot of really neat little shorthands for doing
yeah,
different types of aligning. Aligning to the right
yeah.
or aligning with one space or blah blah blah. I don't use it as often anymore because a lot of the languages that I write tend to have auto formatters, and so I prefer
Hmm.
that over manually doing it. But sometimes it's nice for comments or other stuff like that. It would be
Uh,
cool if someone wrote tabularize that also did the preview, so I could be like
yeah,
checking as I'm typing, like, oh no, I actually meant L0 instead of R0.
yeah.
So that's some free. That's a free GitHub star from me if someone does that right
Abolish is
now.
also another one.
Ah, yes, yeah, exactly. So
Yeah,
I think there's a lot of cool applications, and hopefully people
yeah.
now that they know that that's existing, will start implementing that for a few other plugins because I think it's really cool and exciting to see. What were some of the challenges about doing that? I know that one was a very
Yep,
difficult
it
thing.
was the most difficult thing I did.
Hmm.
So the in-command code basically was messy, very messy.
Yeah.
And I had to refactor the entire thing, restructure it, and so at towards the end, I had a really annoying test failure, and I spent like an entire week trying to fix it, and So what happened was I missed one line of code that caused the, caused me to basically suffer for an entire week, and
Yeah.
I'm already I'm already balding.
I
This does
know
not
that
help.
exact feeling because that was exactly what happened when I was doing the auto commands refactor. Like, you're doing all this code. There's so much going on. I'm trying to write it so that it's, easier to understand and I can feel
Yeah,
confident that I'm doing the right thing and all this stuff. And then you like get so far and then you realize, oh, like I just missed this one global variable set to true and then false later, and I forgot to do that in this random function. And you're like, oh man, that was like a lot of smashing my face against the keyboard and chat laughing at me on Twitch, for this one little thing. But no, that's really cool, and I'm excited to see where it's going. Do you have any thoughts of anything next for Ink Command? Is there like some limitation you wanna make, remove someday? Anything exciting there?
currently in command only really works for buffer edits and all that stuff,
Yeah.
but maybe we can like allow it for all commands. So if you close a buffer, maybe you could incrementally preview that and all that stuff. Maybe
Mm.
I don't really know what the use case for that would be, but it
Yeah.
might be cool.
Yeah. It does having ink command and like the refactors, does that unlock anything new for Neovim going forward? Or, and I'll say, just allow for really cool, exciting incremental changes? Like, is there anything where you felt in the refactor like, oh, maybe now we could do this later? That's not necessarily ink command.
Hmm, let me think. Not really, but
Okay. Yeah,
I'm
because my
also
thought
thinking
was
of
I know
adding.
you had been chatting, at least mentioning a few times, thinking about doing or working on multi-cursors, and I didn't know if that like that code or experience with that
Oh,
code or the refactors would start of maybe like, oh, that sort of puts it a little bit closer as a possibility.
multi-curses and in command are kind of unrelated, but
Okay, cool.
maybe we could see an overlap.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't really know. Won't
Yeah, I
know
was just
until I
thinking for
start
like
working on it.
changes
Uh,
in the
but
buffer. Yeah,
but
go ahead.
I'm planning to add in command for global and normal commands.
Oh, that is really cool. Yeah, that would be really cool. For
Yeah,
those who
I
don't
think
know,
so.
global, you can like just run a search and then do something with everything that matches
Yeah.
that search. So I just did this yesterday on stream, and chat was blown away because I just did a classic like global search for all the empty lines and then did normal
So
DD.
adding in command for global would be easy if not for the fact that you can really execute anything within
I was
global.
just gonna say, like, you can literally do anything you want.
So until we can preview anything, we have to like either selectively preview global or
hmm
not preview it at all.
Yeah,
So that is a pain
yeah, because there
because
are a lot of
figuring
side
out,
effects.
yeah, yeah.
No, that's
So
that's very cool.
it's a very complicated problem. So what it will require to solve it is atomization of commands, as Justin told me. But
hmm
if we want atomization of commands, we'd have to implement multi-cursors. So it's kind of circular problem.
Yeah, well, we'll see. We'll see what happens, and it's been exciting to
Yeah,
see all the cool features. And additionally, which we won't spend a lot of time talking about today, but I did just want to mention clickable status line and, of course,
yeah,
clickable win bar. Shout out!
yeah.
That was a big deal. A lot of people are pretty excited about that, especially
Some people,
especially in combination with like command height is 0 or some other things where they really like
yeah,
the aesthetic of how that looks. Um, I like WinBar some of the time. When I'm on stream, I usually don't have some people are like TJ. You said WinBar's cool. Why don't you have it on stream? Well, on stream, I make my Neovim so big I only show like 20 lines on screen, and I don't do a lot of splits. Not as good. When I'm writing code by myself, I have like a lot more lines on screen, and I like it. So I think
I
it's
think
cool to see more flexibility, and more options, which is great.
I think WinBar goes well with mm, global status line.
Yeah.
So before you couldn't really see file names and all that with global status line. Now you
Mm-hmm.
can.
Yep.
That's a big feature. That's pretty much all I use it for, really.
Yeah.
I mean, you
Yeah,
can
I
use it
think
for other stuff.
yeah. And
Sure.
like I think easily doing something like mapping a keybind to turn WinBar on and off for
Mhm.
yourself or something like that is pretty nice for those situations where most of the time maybe you're not doing splits, but then occasionally you want to see multiple files. There's some cool stuff I think that
Yeah.
you can do with that. So I just wanted to give a shout out to those features as well because they're very cool and I've been enjoying them. And I know I see a lot of people every time there's a new rising post on Reddit. I think they're using all of your features that you've been shipping, so that's been
Yeah.
great.
But clickable status line, some people really got mad at me for that.
That's okay. I
Break
like it.
the
I think my thought on it, and like there's been some other improvements of mouse support generally too, is
Yeah.
one, I think it's easier for new people to come on and maybe they
Yeah.
work themselves out of the habit eventually, which is great. Like
Hmm.
that's good. And the other thing is if you have something that you use like once a month, it
Hmm.
might be heresy. I might get fired from Neovim Core for saying this, but I'll just say it. It could be okay to use the mouse once a month in Vim. I'll just say it. I'll say it.
Cancelled.
Cancel. I guess we gotta end this now. I hear the FBI. They're at my door. So,
Uh,
anyways, yeah, I think those are all the major features that we wanted to cover. I think they're really exciting. I just wanted to
yeah.
make sure we get to hear from you about them. And if
Yeah.
people want to hear more from you, is there anywhere that shout out something that they can do? Can they follow you anywhere from you? Can they follow you on GitHub? That's a good place at least. But
Yeah.
anywhere else?
Get up. Um. Uh. I guess you can follow me on Reddit. That's pretty much
Nice.
the
There
only
we
other
go.
thing in you. And
Cool.
I have a Twitter. Uh.
Yeah.
Twitter at FAMIUHJQUE Famiu.
Nice. We'll put
That
that in the link of the final video as well for places
sure.
for people to follow you and keep up with all the new and exciting features that you've been shipping for Neovim. Any last thoughts or anything you'd like to say?
Um. Not really.
Cool. That's awesome. We'll let your work speak for itself. Thanks, Famiu. And I'm sure everyone in chat right now will be giving you lots of claps. Thanks. And we'll see you probably next release.
Bye bye.